And we're on. Welcome back to the Raice Brothers podcast. And today we have a very special guest, Reb Yoeli Klein.
Awesome to be here.
It really is. And I'll tell you, it's the first time in a while that Yaakov and I have been together recording a podcast. So that's also huge. And the fact that all three of us are together, it's mamish like next level. Shkoyach.
Right.
Toda lael.
Baruch Hashem. L'chaim.
So, a little background. Yoeli and I first met in 11th grade in Shar HaTorah in Queens, at the Heilige Reb Zelig Epstein.
A while back, yeah.
And then, all right, so we were in high school together, Sachakol, a year and a half, because I left early.
Felt a lot longer.
Yeah. It was like, people ask me, where do you go to high school? I went to Shar HaTorah. I go, wow, I was only there from like Hanukkah of 11th grade till Pesach of 12th grade, but that was my high school.
Amazing.
And then we came to Eretz Yisrael, and we were in different yeshivas, but we were always, you know, all the extracurricular activities we did together.
Everything, yeah. I remember my first year, I had a list of where I was every single Shabbos. I don't know why. It was like something that I kept. And it was just like Medrash, Netanya, Medrash, you know, somewhere else. I was by you almost every Shabbos. You had a little dira with like
Harnov.
thing, Harnof by Akiva. Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. It was a good time.
Yeah, and then at some point we ended up learning together. We ended up learning together in the Mir. We learned together. I think first by in the Old City.
Okay.
By Rav
Citron.
Citron.
Right.
I was thinking fruit. I knew there was a C in there. Rav Citron. That was Gavaldic. We
Yeah.
just quickly reminisce because we just started over here in Navi Chabura,
Mm-hmm.
and we started with Hashea. Why did we start Hashea Treyasar? It happens to be when I first came to Rav Citron, you were already learning there, and when I got there, you guys were starting Treyasar. So the first Navi I learned there, like serious Navi learning, was Hashea. We ended up going through Treyasar. We went through a bunch of Naviim together,
Wow.
and it's like, you know what? Let's start Treyasar. But also, we really started Treyasar because we figured that Treyasar, you're starting something new. You like to finish things, you know. You like to
Right.
You get a good shmak when you finish. So Treyasar is like a bunch of little neviim, and you could finish them, and it gives you chiyas to keep going.
Right.
You finish a sheh. It's only 14 program. Your sheh is 60 something, right?
Yeah. Get
Like-
bogged down sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually has been amazing learning it. First of all, Yaakov's like Gaval Magid here, but it's so interesting getting into like learning Navi and seeing where Am Yisrael was back then and seeing the crazy differences from our perspective now learning it. Like even imagine what it was like for a Yidla 1,000 years ago learning Hashea, sitting like, let's say in Europe, right? In some little shtetl, there's muddy streets. The winters last forever. The summer, I don't even know if they had color. It was all black and white. And like everything stunk. And like they're like 1,000 years out of Bayesheni, like suffering under the Christian like the pogroms and everything was just dark. And then you're learning like Hashem and the Navi's like, you guys did this wrong and you did that wrong and God is so pissed off at you and what's wrong with it? Like just like what do you do? Now we're like, yeah, like Hashem was really angry but now we're back in Eretz Yisrael. Like it's a whole different perception, it's a whole different angle.
Sounds like going to high school.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I always think about how it's totally like the progression. Like when it's a little kid, the father's like yelling at him, you're wrong. But then at some point, get into the teenage years, like, the parents that make it through are the ones that start listening to Twisted Parenting, start listening to Rabbi Kalish, you start learning that you just have to love and respect your kids,
Yeah.
But it's not much a whole nother game, game.
Right.
Right. Also makes it easier because when you hit the psukim of Nechama, it feels real. It's
Right.
like, he's talking. Akasheh is talking the whole time to the Seres Shvatim mostly. You're going to be gone, and eventually I'm going to bring you back. And now suddenly we live in Eretz Yisrael, and there's like people that are like, oh, we're B'nai Dan, we're coming back. We're B'nai Menashe, we're coming back. We're B'nai Ephraim, we're coming back. It's like, okay, I don't know, but that's their tradition, and they look different than you or me, and they're coming back from far away places. It's like,
and we're sitting here in Eretz Yisrael. We're drinking, Israeli coffee, where all of the the beers that we have are all brewed in Israel. Like the wines, you go into a wine store and you read about, oh, it's gonna come a time, and your mom is like, we're drinking Eretz Yisrael Dika wines, we're chilling on an Eretz Yisrael Dika porch.
Yeah, it's a big stress, unbelievable.
Yeah, you probably feel it even more, Yoeli, because you've been like back and forth to America
Yeah, yeah,
over the years. I'm
like
like,
yeah. I mean, just skipping from the introduction to the present day. Um, so Baruch Hashem, I'm married a bunch of years now, 15 years, something like that. And we started off our first 11 years here, had a bunch of kids, Kanai Nahara. And for various reasons, we ended up moving back to the States after year 11. And we were there for 2 years, which you did also, I think, 2 or 3 years.
And we were there for 3.5 years.
3.5 years. That's also, you know what? It gives you a lot more perspective than most people.
Yeah.
The Olim, they have like, oh, the beautiful life in America, and they come here and hopefully, they go through all that stuff and hopefully they make it. But like to go back and forth, that's a unique perspective that not everyone has. And so, yeah, we went back for 2 years and then we came back after that. Now we're here for finishing up our third year here back. And again, people ask me, wow, you live in Israel. I was like, today, like Hashem should help, like living in Eretz Israel is the biggest chus, the biggest thrill, the most energetic thing in the world. And it's also with tremendous challenges for Olim, at least, my wife always says, if you're Israeli, it's a lot easier. You have your family, you have your culture, you have a lot of things that are just natural to us. We have, for better or for worse, we're naturally Americans, and because of that, it's always seemingly an adjustment.
We're immigrants.
We're immigrants. Yeah,
It's not easy being an immigrant.
we are those people in America that don't speak English so well,
exactly.
and
Exactly.
and our kids are like, Dad, can you stop talking? Like I'm in front of my friends here.
Totally.
And we are there. Okay, then. Come on, home. I'm not throwing some many.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a world. It's an experience. It's an adjustment back and forth. But the interesting thing is that from what I got from a lot of that is that like the first year that we moved back to the States after being here for so many years, seeped in the kedusha and the tahara and the simcha and the chiyas of Eretz Yisrael. First year was Gehenna. It was so hard, even though we had a nice house and we had 2 cars and we had family and we had schools, like every Costco, Target, Walmart, we had everything. But it was so difficult the first year because we were just like, hello, hello, is anyone alive here? Hello, hello. I remember that it's actually now it's a great time. It's Lag BaOmer. Like my kid, they went to school this week. We were back the first week. We were in America for Pesach. And they're just like super pumped already from Sunday. They're like all day schlepping wood and like everything's about the Medur and everything. And like it hurts to show like Momer is like it's like a month, It's like and you cannot go anywhere without feeling that in America. It's like, you won't notice anything really. And then comes like Momer. This was the first year we were there, and we went to like Willow Tree Park, and they had like 7 firemen standing right near there, guarding all the children, who was like 40, 50 children, a lot of children and parents. And they were like, marshmallows. And don't put that stick in, put it over there. Okay. A stick, another stick, another stick, like it was like, whoa, it was an intense experience. And then like the kids were like, I remember the next day, Baruch Hashem, my parents live in Muncie and they have a forest in the backyard, which we'll probably get to because it's a lot of stuff happened in that forest. And a lot of it's bodedus, that's what I mean. And I was sitting there in the forest the next morning, afternoon. And I just remember like just burst into tears. And I was just like, Hashem, where am I? It's like, Lag BaOmer, Rabbi Shua, Meiro. Like, even if you're not Meiro, it's like, there's just nothing. And I remember the first year was all like that. And then the second year, it was very interesting because I kept telling Rav Kenig was my Rav. We'll speak about him in Hashem, but I kept like asking him the whole first year, like, can we go back now? Like we did our time. We moved to America. We see it's nice, it's comfortable, it's great. But can we go back? He was like, stay. He kept telling me to stay. And I was like, okay, now we can go back. Like, stay. I'm like, okay. And I stayed. And then the second year, all of a sudden things started like calming down, and we started getting into like that American groove where like, you know, things are flowing and you like figuring it out and you're making your Seder and then all of a sudden we were like pretty calm. And then at that point I spoke to him once and we still had that desire to get back to Arcelor. And he was like, "Fine." And we were like, yeah. And we just said, okay, we're packing up. And we started making all the preparations to run back to Israel. And Baruch Hashem, Basuf, we did it. And ironically enough, that whole second year, we kept getting more and more comfortable. And so when we came, it was already, we weren't sad to come, but it was an interesting experience because we were in such a good place. And then to come here, it was just interesting, you know? And
You have to unplug from the American
yeah,
outlet.
yeah.
What did you draw out of that? That like this chain of events that when you were not settled there, you wanted you to stay, and then once you felt settled, Rav Kenig said it's time to come back. Like, what did that say? Like, what did you draw out of that?
So the lesson that I learned, which I think has been proven wrong by experience, is that again, this is my conjecture in my mind of what I think he might have been doing, was that maybe he wanted us to feel that, you know, like you could live, you know, it's not bad to have a home that functions. It's not bad to have cars. It's not bad to have a life that actually is good physically and is set up and is calm and is. So I learned from that. I was like, maybe that's what he was trying to say. Like, go back to Israel and try to do that for yourself. And he did mention that. He was like, set yourself up nice, you know, take care of things, make sure that it's like. And I guess like my wife likes to point out, I kind of failed in that sense because we came back and it was chaos. It was just utter chaos. We moved 6 times in 2 months. We had a baby. It was just kind of very chaotic. And so in my mind, I was like, yeah. And my wife is also like that. Like, yeah, we're going to set up our shiurim. We're going to have proper exercise. We're going to eat properly. And we're going to shop properly. And it doesn't always work out like that. So, like, I'm not going to say that line that everyone tells me. It's still because you're silly. You know, like, me and my wife both, like, just don't give me the Yisurin deal. Like, enough. But there is a liveliness to Eretz Yisrael and I don't know how to describe it, that kind of has taught me that. I'm not sure. Not quite sure how to balance it yet.
I feel like it's when you're changing it up, like it requires it. I mean, the line of Eretz Yisrael and Nicholas B'Yasurin is very real. I think it maybe has a lot of negative feelings surrounded to it because there's a lot of pain, but you need to be absorbed. Like when you graft, let's say a tree together, like it's trauma. It's traumatic for the tree, and until it actually catches, and then you're able to be yoinik in the proper way. Like it requires it. Like sometimes when you change the connections, you have to put in new washers, new O-rings. Like as a from a plumber, like it requires a
adaptation
and going back to like an original place, like an original tshuva. It's not easy. It's not, and it does. And doing it twice, it's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. What were you about to say, Akko?
No, it was just you started talking about transplants.
Yeah.
That automatically
I had the same thought.
made me think of Reb Kenig.
Yeah.
Sal.
With the muscle that he was giving also,
Yeah.
is that basically when you grasp something, it's not an easy connection. And as the story goes, we'll work backwards a little bit.
Right.
But Rev Kenig was in America in Muncie in 2005.
Right. Let's do the rewind.
Yeah. How did you meet? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
How did we get involved with all this?
Right. Why did you exactly?
Right. Yeah.
Wait, what
Right,
happened?
all those-
when you were in high school, how'd you end up wanting to be an air team?
I tell that to everyone. Like they're like, so like had you come Breslov? I was like, I went to the mirror. They're like, excuse me? I was like, yeah, of course. If you go to the mirror and you have like that spiritual soul, you're gonna become Breslov. That's what happened.
I mean, it's amazing how many Punavishers, how many Breslovers learned in Punavish.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
old, like the older generation. Like,
Yeah.
so many of them. You're like, really?
Uh-huh.
How'd that happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, for me, that was what it was. Like high school was an interesting experience to say the least. Put it this way, when I arrived in Israel at 18, actually the day of the day before I left Israel at 18, I turned 18. 2 days before, August 15th, my birthday is August 13th. I turned 18, so I went to 7-Eleven and I bought a pack of cigarettes the first time with my ID. And I like, obviously, you can buy a pack of cigarettes any other way, but with an ID, it was like, and the Pakistani guy was like, "Oh, happy birthday!" And he was like so excited. He has another customer, and I was like, "Dude, I'm leaving in 2 days to Israel. You're never gonna see me again." But but
Did
but
you
I
catch that interaction on your video camera?
another point, yeah. We used to video. That was a little bit before the video days. But so I went to Israel, and when I went there, I had a bit of the Rabbi Akiva at the early stages of biting the ears off of talmid chachamim syndrome. I wasn't exactly happy, and like literally within a week of being in base Yisrael and Neve Yaakov, I was just like, you know, I love these people. I love rabbis. I love Israel. It was just like a very beautiful experience, like melted me. It took a couple of years till I got into learning and all that stuff, but eventually, Baruch Hashem, it caught and it worked, and I went through that process, and then I went to the mirror, and then it was just like whoa, like like I was just, it was a very big crash.
Oh,
It was a crash.
I wasn't sure if that was you diving into something.
No, it was a crash. It was a crumble and a crash.
Wait, so you did like the standard American flip out in base?
Yeah.
So I didn't even know, like, this is like before I even met you.
Yes, you're the younger brother.
I am the younger brother. I have no qualms about it. Like, no qualms. Like, everybody knows Yaakov's the older one, I'm the younger one.
They only know after you say that,
Right.
because when they meet us, they think I'm the younger brother and you're the older brother.
It's funny. Like, I find it always like it's beautiful and funny, but like, when your kids, like, so my kids, like, they have like, oh, that's my 11-year-old. He's not gonna play with the 8-year-old. It's so stupid. But when they're 89 and he's 86,
Right.
they'll play. So like now, I don't even know how much younger you are than us, but
Right.
we're all
Exactly.
here.
Back then, when you were in high school, I was still in elementary school.
Exactly.
But now already, and also Yaakov was also like a grade older. Right? Are you
Right.
guys the
Yaakov
same
also,
age, or are you
Yaakov's a year younger.
At least
Year and a half.
younger, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I always tell people Yaakov's like really all the Torah that I know is really like I got through the cleaner of Yaakov, especially Breslov, which we'll get into.
Right. So that's basically what
So you
happened.
flipped out in base,
Flip out in base. Pretty classic stuff.
like
Yeah.
hardcore yeshivish, black hat.
I wouldn't say yeshivish. Yeah, yeshivish would not be a term that I could
You
ever
put on the black.
associate.
You put on a rim down black hat.
I did the black hat, but at that time I put like a very short rim, which wasn't in style then.
Right.
But it was enough different that I wasn't.
So to make a statement.
Yeah.
I don't even remember you in like yeshiva hat at all.
Yeah, I don't think I wore it more than davening ever. But I was like part of that mahalach. Like, I did put on the white shirt and black pants in third year. Second year, I was still doing like the plaid shirts, whatever you can get away with in base. And yeah, it was like first year I actually, not ironically, but I guess I don't know the generations anymore. X, Z, D. I don't know. They're all labeled nowadays. But I did nothing first year other than not such good things in base, and then second year I started learning only then. But then I was just literally like I spent the entire learning Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. Like that was basically what I learned the whole year, just Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. Went through all his books and like Ramchal and like just Moshav Matityahu and everything. Gemara I was just still like whoa, like buzzed out from. And then third year I really put myself into the Gemara learning, which was amazing. It took me like 2 months from when I like kind of stopped watching television and movies and all that stuff till like the scenes stopped flashing through my eyes and I was actually able to focus on the page. But then I was able to learn third year and it was amazing.
Wow.
And then I took the leap to Amir and the crash down shortly thereafter of just whoa. And obviously there's nothing to do with the mirror, because the mirror is a wonderful place. The Nassan Sfi was there, it's a beautiful place. But like coming from where I was coming from, it was just there was no one there for me, and the people around me were all like intense and like trying to find a seat and fight and like. And also Neve Yaakov, where I was, it was beautiful. I saw the mountains of Yerushalayim. That wasn't a city I couldn't handle it. A Muncie guy. Kitzer, so that caused a lot of darkness and depression. And from that, I just started just searching and seeking. And
What time of year did you make the jump?
it's funny because I remember dates. Why? Because like postscript, they were interesting dates. So I remember one day it was a B'Tevis, which later I found out was Reb Noson's yard site.
Right.
And I remember it because I was fasting and I was so depressed and it was pouring rain. You know, for many years we had drought. That year, just rained the whole winter. It was, I remember just being wet all winter. And I was standing there in Moshav, like, and I was on the phone with my dad, and I was like, I was just talking to him. And I was close to Akiva for already 4 years, and Akiva always was like, Breslov and this and that, you know, like everything's about like living Yiddishkeit and Chassidus and everything, but I never connected to anything. It was just Akiva. It was a party, you know. It was like, obviously, it had a lot to do with me becoming from and like grabbing onto it, but it was never focused in any way. But I knew that there was something there. Like,
Yeah, can I just jump in? 'Cause
Yeah,
you just
please.
brought up a memory
Yeah.
of a Hanukkah, one of those years, first year, second year, I don't know, in Akiva and Dina's apartment on Mishkalov, and we had a
old
little
one.
Hanukkah party. Maybe just 5, 6 people, me, you, Avi Predator, Akiva. And I remember we put on Nanach, like old Yisrael, the Gan Nanach tapes, like pumping music. And I remember dancing for like an hour. Just a few, maybe 6 guys, I don't know.
The one across the street from where he is now.
Yes.
That one. Yeah.
I remember like, and
Had
that
like a
was,
Gina.
and we didn't know nothing about Breslov, but
I remember that.
there's something there that we just danced and danced. It was one of the happiest nights.
I remember that night. That was a good memory. So yeah.
This is you, and this is mirror time, or this is before that. Even.
Probably before.
This was must have been before,
Wow.
yeah. Maybe around the same time, who knows. But yeah, so then basically I remember on Asar B'Tevis, I was speaking to my dad on the phone, wet and miserable. And I was like, I think I'm gonna just start like looking into Breslov. What do you think about that? He was like, I'm okay with that, but don't learn the Kutimaran. Okay. You know, and I'm very respectful to my parents. I honor them and tremendously treasure what they say, even though necessarily, you know, I wouldn't give that advice. But from where my father's coming from, he grew up Satmar and he went out and worked and everything. And he just knows that people that learn the Kutimaran come going. Right. It's obvious, you know. So, and stay with the Rav Yaakov Meir Shechter. Stay with the normal people. I was like, okay. So I kind of got like this, like,
Tzvi Chesed.
he didn't know who Tzvi Chesed was. So
Oh.
yeah.
But you just,
Right,
you know,
that's also-
Mir, it's like he's like
right.
the most respected Breslover in the yeshivish world, like for years now, you know?
Yeah, because he's the name you could throw around. Yeah. Years later, I was speaking to Rabbi Elephant, my Rebbi in the mirror, and he was like telling me, like, "Oh, so you're close? Tzvi Chesed?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. Oh, okay, good." It's like
Right.
you're good.
You get a
with-
pass.
Yeah, you get a pass. You're okay. So I got a little tour to like go down that path, which I felt good about, but I still didn't know where to go, what to do. So at a certain point, I remember, I don't know who had a Sichas Aran, and I just like opened it up. My Hebrew skills were very poor at that point. So I just couldn't understand what, and I never learned Hasidus in my life. I just didn't understand what the Rebbe was talking about. Like I just didn't understand anything. So I felt very like inadequate and I didn't learn it. And then one day I finally made it to the Breslov store there in the bottom of the shul in Meisharim. And David was there. I like till this day he always loves. He goes, like whatever he pulls over another guy, goes, "Who made you Breslov?" I was like, "All right, you did." I see. I walked in there. I was like, "David, do you have anything like for Sichas Aran, like a pirush that I can understand?" He goes, "Sichas Aran, that's pirush. Like that's as simple as it gets." I was like, "I don't understand." He goes, "You need English." And he gave me the Rabbi Nachman's Wisdom, and I bought that book there. And wow, the next like 2 months, I was just reading piece by piece in English with Aryeh.
But you were into Aryeh Kaplan, somehow the leap to
I was
Rabbi
just
Nachman's
about
wisdom.
to, right. I was just about to say that. It's so funny that I also went through the Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan phase, and then only later did I find out that he was the writer of all these rest of the books. Because in the Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan world, you don't read those. Like
Yeah.
I knew much quicker that he did
You don't read them, you don't even know about them.
right. You don't, right. Derech Hashem by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, like that. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, he did the translation, and like of course I learned that one also because it was Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan when you do that whole stage. But the Breslov stuff, I had no clue. And you're like, wait, he was really Breslov. Even the Hasidic ones, right? Hasidic masters.
Right.
I didn't even know about that when it was like we had like the start with the anthologies,
Right.
and then even meditation. Like, oh, look, Rabbi Kaplan opens this whole world.
The light
But
beyond.
the light beyond. But the Hasidas, suddenly you're like, whoa. And then the Breslov. I for
Yeah.
years didn't know that he was a Breslover.
Wow, you just gave me a major chuka, by the way, to go read through all of his books again.
I
Be able
know.
to do that.
I've had those thoughts
They're
also.
the best.
Even my kid just become bar mitzvah, and I was like, I should learn that book tefillin with him. Like, what am I doing? And I just haven't had the opportunity to do it yet, but I still want to do that.
Yeah, I did it with Shlomo.
Right,
went
I-
to-
So
I have like
good.
one of Rabbi Kaplan's books. I don't even know where they all are. Like I had them, and then you lend them out.
Yeah.
But the one I still have is one about Yerushalayim, and I've read that a lot to my kids. Like we've
Wow.
gone through that.
Yes. Yeah, he's
the tefillin one is so good because it goes so normal. And
methodical.
before that, I went through with Shlomo. I did Reb Yoeli Klein about
Uh-huh.
becoming bar mitzvah and Rabbi Kaplan, and also the basic ideas of like what God is and who Hashem. Like these things are so essential.
Yeah.
Anyhow, sorry for
Anyway.
the sidetrack.
Yeah. No, there was no sidetrack. There would be no path. So Baruch Hashem. So basically that's what led me. And during that period of time, it was like also a big, upheaval in my life. Just what am I doing? Who am I? That was like the big question, and a lot of introspection and a lot of reading through that stuff. And as I just kept reading through that and some more Breslov Storm and stuff, I just felt this was me. Like there was no, like everything that the Rav was speaking about was exactly the way I approach things, the way I would want to learn things, the way I would want to live my life. So it was so validating and guiding that it was just unbelievable. And then the reason why I say it is that I still had no connection to like Breslov in any organized structure until Tu B'Shvat, which I found out later was Rav Noson's birthday. So on Tu B'Shvat, I decided that I'm going to go to the Breslov Shul there in Mei Sharm. It's a 4-minute walk from Yeshiva, and I'm going to go daven there. I'm going to go check it out. And so it was really interesting. This is also like kind of tangent ago. I went there. The first time I went there was like on Friday morning or something after Shacharis, just to like see where it was and who to speak to. And as I was going in, I couldn't get in because there was this old dude. I have no idea who he was till this day. He must have been like 98. He was being wheeled in with a wheelchair. And the whole time he was laughing. He was not the Saba. We're talking about 2005, 2003, really. 2003. I think the Saba was not there already yet. But he was laughing, old dude with white beard. He was talking to this Sephardi young teenager that was schlepping his wheelchair up. He goes, let me tell you, and he was telling him in Hebrew, let me tell you. Why did it say that in the next word, in the future, in Sheikh's times, everyone's gonna be laughing? Why is it laughing? Why? What's so funny? He was like this real character. I have no idea who he was till this day. And he said, I'll tell you why. Because you see these old people in the wheelchairs, Sheikh's gonna come and they're gonna be healed like that. You guys are all dancing there. You know who's gonna come in the middle doing somersaults? Me. He said, that's gonna be the laughter. And he starts laughing. I was like, wow, who is this? It's just
Welcome to Breslov.
Welcome to Breslov, exactly. And I was just like, whoa. And I came to the shul. I spoke to some guys. They were like, just come to the shul. Someone's gonna invite you out. You don't have to worry about food. Just come. It's beautiful. So I came that Friday night. It was off the charts. Like all of like the big Breslov Mashpiyim were there because it's like Tu B'Shvat. It was like, I think we must have been 700-800 people. You could barely move. And it was slow. The davening of Breslov, like in the shuls.
Yeah.
Slow, but with focus. And that was like beautiful. And it was so loud and beautiful. And then something about also like the people there was it was so eclectic, but beautiful, like everyone, like there were Sephardim, there were Ashkenazim, there were Hasidim, like real, like Yerushalayim Hasidim, and there were like American Hasidim, and there were people that were wearing hippie clothing, and obviously there wasn't a lot. It was like mainly Hasidim, but it was so eclectic, and they had like their eyes were so alive, so lit. There was nothing like fake or like I'm just doing this because like I'm Brussels, I have to do this, I have to come to shul. No, it was like, I don't know, maybe it was just from where I was, but it was so lichtig. And I remember just standing there during davening, being like, these are my people. This is like, I want to be with these type of people alive. And it's not like I made this decision there for Breslov, like it was just like something that went into my heart. Like, wow, these are awesome people. And then sure enough, this short red beard yid named Rav Berish. He's the guy that goes around the shul. He's the sweetest Yerushalayim yid. He goes, "Can you please over for a meal?" I was like, "Sure." Oh, perfect. Oh, come with me to the bank over there. I go there. He gathers all the schleppers and the nebuchs and all of these people. He brings them back to his apartment in Bati Ungarn that was the size literally of, you know, 4.5 meters by 3.5 meters, like 12 square feet. And 120 square feet. A little teeny farm. He has benches and tables and benches and tables set up in every little way. And he goes, he stuffs 30, 40 people there, just starts singing the Zmiris with such simcha. It was just like, and I was sitting there, just wow. It was such an experience. And I would say from there is history, but obviously there's ups and downs and this and that. But that was basically the time that I started, and then eventually I got closer to Chaim Kramer, and eventually I got close to all the Svarim, and I was able to learn it more. And then after that, to fast forward, I made a stopover by Reb Tzvi Meyer for a good year. I was there every Shalosh Shudas, 6 hours. It was an incredible experience. And then to Reb Itchemeyer, Morgenstern. That was during the Tkufa that we were together in the old city with the beautiful Misnagdim. Yeah. And it was,
Shavuos night, we went to Rabbi Itchemeyer together.
yeah, that was
amazing.
It was nice to see dancing and singing. Like,
remember my memories of that night where we got there, it was already pretty late. I remember walking into the base medrash and it wasn't full. There was a couple of guys in the base medrash. Maybe it was like half full, chilling. It was quiet. Some people were schluffing, learning. And Rabbi Itchemeyer was in the Ezra's Nashim. Like the windows were slidey windows. They were open, and he was in there by himself, all dressed in white, learning with like this shine on his face. It was gleaming with sweat.
Right.
And I don't. And then all of a sudden, he jumps up and he runs into the basement and he starts grabbing everyone to get up and run around, singing and dancing in a circle for a few minutes. And we're like all running around. And then he stops and he goes back and he sits down and he's learning again. And he did this and it was repeated like several times. It was such a trip.
Yeah. Those were experiences. Richard Meyer's times was really unbelievable.
Yeah.
I was going to come pretty close with him. I'll tell you one story that was pretty trippy. That he never remembers names. I don't even know if he knows anyone in his basement. Yeah, like he's in like world.
Yeah, he's in another place.
He's in another place. That's good. I can't drink that much. It was high.
Chaim.
I'm telling you, show them. But he remembers like kind of like names and neshamas. Like someone I know that's very close to him. He'll say like, yeah, it's so and so. He's like, huh? And they'll say it's Hebrew names. Moshe, Moshe Ben, like he remembers the shamas. So I was there for like 6 months, like every shalosh, I was there all the time. But I still didn't know if he knows my name or if he even like recognizes me. But he knows my neshama, that's definitely. So we were in this chabura in the old city that was very Keneged Chasidus in a very deep way. And one of the things that they were discussing that week was that you shouldn't bring underage kids to shul because they're nuisances. They just make noise. They just disturb davening. Davening is a serious thing. There should be serious people. When they're of the age, bring them. They're going to be quiet and shy. So I heard the point. And I was, 21. I was like, that's a very good point. I like davening serious. I like quiet davenings, like focus. I don't need kids running around. So I was like, but something about it disturbed me a little bit because like, when you're a kid, you go to shul, like it's part of life. Like what, you're not going to see a shul till they're 13, it's weird. I wasn't sure. And Rav Meyer walks home from his shtivel then to his house in Gani Gula. There's like a 45-minute walk as he walks like one step at a time. Like he just sways back and forth in his white package, going up Bailan, the whole Bailan there. It was a beautiful walk. And I would eat by his house Friday night a lot. So I was eating there and we were walking up and people ask him the most ridiculous questions then, like, why is the Gilgal? Who's the Gilgal? And he would just give answers. Yeah, I know, Rabbi Kivo's, you're Shesh Neshama, so you're a bit like this and a bit like that. He would say wild, far out things. I never had the chutzpah to do these things. I was very timid, especially around tzaddikim like that. Like, I'm not going to bother him. You have to have that certain azis to kedusha with tzaddikim. Anyways, so we were walking up the hill, and literally, I don't know what we were speaking about, but like the question was roiling around in my mind, but I was too afraid to verbalize it. So then out of nowhere, he goes, he turns me, looking at me straight in the eye. I'm telling you this happened. He goes, you know, there was a shul in England that they said kids can't come. They disturb the davening. He's English.
Yeah.
He goes, they disturb the davening. You know what happened to those kids? They all went off to bed. And I was like, nope, I didn't even ask you.
That's
I
awesome.
was just like, okay, I got my answer. You know, like, no question asked, I have my answer. And so
Wow.
he's like that, he's neshamadik, So I was very close to him then in that sense. Like I would eat by his house a lot, we'd ask him questions and stuff. Again, like I don't know if you remembered me from time to time, but it was neshamadik, But basically from that point on, after that, I ended up back in America for Sukkot, and I was like Yom Kippur Sukkot, and I was at like a low point in my life. I was trying to get married, and things were confusing, and Vitchemeyer, and these Misnagdim. I was very confused, very like thrown all over the place in my life at that point, and so I just went back to America to regroup a little bit for Sukkot, and
Ditched me.
I ditched
Bruce
you.
ditched me.
Yes, I ditched you then. That was a very bad thing, good thing. But
It's okay. I forgive you.
yeah, we ended up getting back together a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was hard when you left.
Yeah.
We were learning really well.
Yeah, we were pounding. That was unreal.
Yeah, and then you ended up coming to Ner Jake.
Yeah.
And tried to get me out of bed.
Right. That was that winter.
That was that summer. Winter, Yoli was still there. You guys were by Rabbi Citron.
No. You left after Sukkot, right? Wintersman, you were in America that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whole
That
winter I was
Wintersman,
away.
I was in there, Jake.
Elul, I was there
Oh.
still, but yeah. So.
This is your first year, I believe.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because then I ended up going to Ner Yaakov every morning
Right.
and learning with Yehuda. Or
Right.
hanging with Yehuda.
Wow.
No, we learned a lot.
We did stuff.
Like-
But we also were getting. That's also when I started like learning Breslov.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess at that point I had already rubbed off somewhat on Yaakov, or
Totally.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I was already like full blown Breslov for like a year or so. I went to Uman already in Samach Gimel and Samach Dalet and Samach
Right.
Hey.
So that was your first year. 'Cause
Right.
That's the year that Gedalia was born.
Right, and I missed his bris. Right, that was a new one. Right, and that was Samach Dalet, and then Samach Hey was my second year.
And that was our first year.
Right, and then that was when I was super close to Richard Meyer, davened with him and everything,
Right.
and that was the only time I've seen Or in my life, like Or. I davened in the Klois the first night, and I came to
This is the first year or second year?
my second year, your first year,
Okay.
first time I was with Richard Meyer, and he's davening in the coat room. Do you remember that of the Tzion? You
What-
remember that?
1 second. He davened outside where the Nanafs davened.
That was years
It was
later.
later.
It
It
was
was
later.
a few
Later?
years, not that much.
Oh.
Later.
No,
A few years.
but
Which coat room?
when you
In the
walk into the
place?
Tzion, no, it's Tzion. When you're walking into Reb Nachman's kever,
Yeah.
so there's a huge outdoor area, and then there's like a door that goes in, and there's like
Right.
washing
Right,
things,
right,
and
right.
it used to
That
be called the
little-
coat room. That
Yeah.
was his shul.
Right.
It's like literally the size also of like 12 feet, and he used to just put like a beamer there, and he would just do his whole tefillah, and everyone would like start, and then like everyone else is going into the Tzion. It was a
Right. There's people
chaos
walking through the whole time.
the whole time, and like pushing and shoving it. It was chaos there, It was classic Rebbi Meyer like davening, because I think he holds very strongly daven like mamish as close as you could, and the Moroccans already have, not the Moroccans, the Taimanim already are davening
they have
in the
the-
Tzion, and the
right.
Sephardim are outside. It wasn't no place, so he got the coat room. Great shtickle. Eventually they built like all these rooms, and it's become like a whole institution around there. You could have like your own area and shul. and,
Right. He ended up moving right outside to the back where the
Right.
Hanachs were,
Right.
right behind.
No, but then now they built him like a room there, like
now
in
he
the
has his
back.
own-
He has his
He's
own
not there
shul.
anymore.
Now he doesn't go at all.
Right.
That's a
No,
different
they
story.
built him up. They built him a place.
He had his own room in the back there. Yeah. His own shul, basically.
like
in the
behind the
Tzion.
Nanafs.
No. Behind where like the outdoor area is, there's like a room. That was his area. Kitzer. So I walked in there, and it was after the meal, 4 hours later. Not the first night of Rosh Hashanah, without 4 hours from Esrei. But Shemai apparently that was also 4 hours. He was still in Shemai Esrei. and I walked around him and walked in front of him. I looked up. It was the only time I can't describe it, just the aura, like spiritual light emanating from a human being. I was like,
Wow.
I literally just stood there. He was just and he went I to show him the moment, like literally like 3 minutes after I got there. He was at the end of 4 hours from Esrei. It was just unbelievable. Kitzur, that Rosh Hashanah, to make it sound even more interesting, not sound interesting, is what happened. Erev Rosh Hashanah, there's a minhag in Breslov to get pidyon nefesh. I didn't have much money, so I got some money sent up from America with a friend, and I said, send up $100. I want to give $100 to Rebbi Shammai. He was my Rav, my connection at that point. And so the person that was there, he gave me $100, but in 250s. Like, works, same thing, $100, 250s. And I had it in my pocket, Erev Rosh Hashanah, and I'm walking down Pushkina, and I bump into Avram Shimon Weingart. Avram Shimon, what's going on? And we already connected the first year at Uman, there was an epic connection with a big barbecue, so on and so forth. I'm not gonna get into that, but there's he's like, I got it in with Rav Kenig. Let's go. I don't know who Rav Kenig was. I never saw him, never met him. I might have seen him, but I had nothing to do with him. But I knew he was a big tzaddik. So I was like, cool. Like, you got it in? Like, come with me right now. So he schleps me, and we go up these steps in this building, and he's like, we're gonna go and get pigeon. I was like, cool. And I pulled out my wallet and my thing. I had 250s. I was like, perfect. I'll give 50. So I gave 150 to Rav Kenig. He couldn't see us then. I gave it to like the gabbai with our names and stuff. And I gave the other 50 to Rebbi Shammai, which was like a foreshadowing of what would happen that year, which was really cool. Because in that year, basically, I went back right after Rosh Hashanah to America. And as the story goes, Rav Kenig was in America at that point, waiting for a lung transplant. He flew to America because he had a genetic lung disease 18 years earlier that was eating away at his life. And he couldn't live anymore without a lung transplant. So he was waiting in Muncie for a transplant. He was at some guy's house that had a pool. He's very, very into the mikveh. To go to the mikveh every day. So he was going in the pool. It was getting cold. So Hashgacha Pratis would have it. My dad has a mikveh in his basement, as not many people know, in Briarwood, Anshe Briarwood. It's a very popular place right now.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was very quiet. There was no one there. We had a minyan on Shabbos, but that's it. There was still a beautiful mikveh though. My father built it with the house. And
good times in the Briarwood mikveh.
Yes. Hot, clean, private mikveh. Yeah. No. He said at that point there was a guy in Muncie that had an ankle bracelet. So he was embarrassed to go to the mikveh. He asked my father, he didn't really know my father. He said, can we use the mikveh? So he started using the mikveh. This guy was close with Rav Kenig. So they made the connection, like, oh, it's getting cold. Why don't you go to this private mikveh? You have a lung disease. You don't want to be in a mikveh with 30, whatever, sickly people. Go to this mikveh. And it's private. It was a whole avodah. So I remember I was just sitting there. It was the Shabbos in between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. And someone just came upstairs and was like, Rav Kenig's downstairs. I was like, excuse me? Like, Rav Kenig downstairs. I was like, oh my gosh. I like threw on my clothing. I don't know what I was wearing. Ran downstairs. He was already in the mikveh. We waited. And he came out of the mikveh. He had double oxygen. He had an oxygen thing like this, if you remember, and kind of like that. He was basically not living, but he would go in the mikveh. It would be a huge avodah. He would literally go in with his oxygen tanks, hold it up, like he would like put it on the side, dunk, and I don't know how many dunks he would do, maybe 3, and then he would come out and he would be wheezing for like 40 minutes. 40 minutes. He couldn't move. So we met him. We sat with him. He said hello. And then he started coming to use the mikveh more and more and more. Each time he would come out, he couldn't do anything. So he told us, me and another guy, read Likutei Moharan. We'd open Likutei Moharan and we would learn Likutei Moharan with him. We'd read it. Invariably we'd have questions and we'd ask him and he would like pull himself together and he would answer us. And that was the beginning of our relationship. It was like, wow, like sitting 2-3 people and learning Likutei Moharan for an hour with Rav Kenig. It was amazing. And then I would start asking him questions about my life and about things. And I was very confused also because of Misnagdim and Breslov and marriage and everything. And he would just give me these beautiful answers in his way. And that began our relationship. And with me, which would be as like a talmid eventually, and with my family, which would be also like as like a connection. Like my father said, Breslov is the last name, could be Litvish Breslov, Satmar Breslov,
That's right.
you know. So my father is Heimish Breslov. I don't know, you know, he's his own thing. He's not Breslov, you know, he's just doing his own thing, but he became
Klein Breslov.
Klein Breslov, very close with Rav Kenig and the family. And
Who came up with FOB? Friend of Breslov.
yeah, my dad definitely says that. I don't know if he came it up. So we ended up becoming very close. And at a certain point around Rosh Chodesh Kislev, Rav Kenig was living in this person's house in Muncie, and the person moved into his basement with his whole family, and Rav Kenig was living on the top floor. And it was just not like the best situation. So my dad was like, we have a basement, we have a shul, we have a kitchen, we have a room, we have a mikvah. Like, tell Rav Kenig to come here. He wasn't Breslov, he wasn't like, but it's like my parents are big Baalei Chesed. They love to help people, and my father loves Rebbes and things like that. I remember there's the only time that I've seen my father do this. My father, Baruch Hashem, you know, he works, he makes money, and he does tremendous chesed. But to do something with your hands is like different. Like I've never seen really my father like take things with his hand and like do. But one time the Talmid Aaron Rebbe came to our house, and he came at 12:30 at night. My mother couldn't stay up anymore. She was like, I can't go to sleep. I don't even know when he's going to come 3, you know, Rebbe's. So my father and I stayed up, and then the Rebbe came out and talked at like 12:30. And by the time he settled in his room and everything, it was like 1. And my father quickly ran to the fridge, took out a piece of gefilte fish with his hand, started cutting it up and serving it. I was like, whoa, I've never seen my dad cut a piece of gefilte fish with his hands, like, you know, like serve it. I was like, wow, this is so cool. It made an impression on me. Like, it's a Rebbe, you know,
How
like,
old were you then?
no, it was like when I was 19, 20. It was like shortly before then, you know. I remember because he went into the Rebbe, he says, you know, shidduch. You know, my father was always asking for shidduchim and brachos and stuff, which is another great story by Richard Meyer, by the way. We were once to Richard Meyer that winter when I was in America. Richard Meyer came to Laser Shiner's house, and me and my father went in. No, it was a different time when we went in with Richard Meyer. It was in Israel, because I remember he was in his study there. He has like this study with like a gazillion svarim all over him. And my father said, you know, he's not getting shidduchim. Breslov, it's not a good name. What should we do? And Richard Meyer leans back and he laughs. He goes, let the bad ones fall away. He's laughing and laughing. My father was like, oh gosh, that's not the answer I wanted. You think he's gonna tell me, you know, like, put yourself together, you know, you don't have to tell everyone your Breslov. Let the bad ones fall away. I love it.
That's amazing.
So he we went to what's called, so that winter he ended up around Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Rav Kenig he checked it out. He ended up moving into our house. Now at that point my father and mother had made unchangeable tickets, not like post-COVID where you could just change tickets all the time and it's not a big deal. They had made plans to go to Florida for 2 weeks. And that was like their vacation, and they had tickets and everything. And that was right the day that Rav Kenig was going. They were flying out. So they're like, really? It's a good thing you're here. The house is yours. Take care of the Rebbe. I was like, okay. I don't know what I'm doing. So I was just like, basically became his shamish. Like, he had a gabbai, and he had his brother, and he had his hasidim that were there, 2 or 3 of them. But I was like the point man, and I was like getting everything organized and together and everything. And for 2 weeks, we made Shabbos together. We had meals together, everything together. And it was just like, wow, it was just unbelievable experience. And it began our relationship, but he was dying like before our eyes. It was an incredible thing to see. It was terrible. Like literally, he was just every day he would just get weaker and weaker. He couldn't lift his arms, you know, like certain days he couldn't get out of bed, like lift his arms. There are people that said that with such oxygen levels in his blood, most people would be fainted and half unconscious most of the time, but Rav Kenig would push himself. And he told this to, I think, to Rav David Sears once. He was just like whatever you could do, just do. If you don't have energy for Likutei Moharan, because it takes a lot of mindfulness to be in Likutei Moharan, so just read Sefer Maisis. And he had someone sit there and read Sefer Maisis for him. He went through the whole sefer during that tekufa. They would just read it for him. He would just sit there like listening to it, you know, like whatever he could do. I remember, and like one time during that tekufa that was really hard. Shirley Woolager came. I remember all the singers came to be Mesameachim. David, Avram Fried came. Avram Fried was dancing and singing. And like they give like these insanely awesome performances, and there's 2 people there. It's amazing. I got such respect for them, you know, like really like amazing what they could do, you know. And So Swirly was there and he was giving a performance, a keyboardist, and then he was dancing, singing, and doing everything. And the Rav was sitting there. He couldn't lift himself up the first like 20 minutes. He was just sitting there and it's like what do they call it? Like lazy boy chairs.
Yeah.
He just like, and slowly he started to tap his foot and started to tap this thing. And 45 minutes afterwards, he was like, it literally like gave him chiyas. It revived him. He looked like he had more blood in his face. And it's really packed up his things, got brachas and smoked him. He left. Second he left, he told his gabbai, go to mikveh. He said, we have
Right.
just enough energy. I want to do something kedusha. I want to go to the mikveh. And it was like 30 more feet. He made it there. He went in, he did his avoid in the mikveh and he came out and he was like collapsing, and he learned with us.
Wow.
You always like literally just do something, whatever you can, like you're feeling like out of it today, like, okay. That was Nachman's famous thing, a bissel is echdut, like a little bit is also good, or Nachman said it changes life. You grow up in like the yeshiva world, it's like, you're a failure. You're not learning Ian. It's Bekias though, it's Gemara, isn't that good? No, you can learn Ian, like Reb Nachman showed us that like, no, whatever you do, whatever you could do that. And like with simcha, with all these things, like just grab the little pieces. And when you grab the little pieces, it brings you to the bigger pieces. And and just don't get dejected and rejected on your own self that like, well, I can't do that, And it's such a big klipa, and especially in today's day and age, that like, we just get so caught up in the perfection, especially since the world is very perfect, quote unquote, that we live in. Everything's about perfection, 2 kids, dog, like everything should be perfect, everything should be stable. And we live in a world like that, so we get caught up in that with our Yiddishkeit. I don't know if Yiddishkeit was meant to be like that, like every Yipal Tzaddik come is a reality. It's not like, oh, Nebuch, that Tzaddik fell. We all fall, we all rise and we fall, and that's part of life. And when you grab onto the little things, it seems like, come on, like between me, what are you doing? You're listening to someone say super it's stories. And then he went and there was a wagon, he fell off the wagon, and you're not having big kavanas. Whatever you could do.
I don't know. You said he's learning super mises. I'm like, oh man, that could go way deeper, especially for someone. Or Kenig was learning super mises his whole life.
Right.
You can imagine where he's going when he hears the stories.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he was a big tzaddik and a big Baal Hasaga.
I don't know. I feel like though that he did, like, even though I didn't know him nearly like nothing, I only know him through you, and those few times that we had like the things, but he always had a simplicity to everything. It was so simple, and so like I'm sure you can't talk about that and give that over unless he really lived it. Like I believe that, and maybe sometimes he was also like Rabbi Meyer is like always like cocking them. I've kind of like he's just sometimes able to be so present just with hearing the story. Like I believe that he was able to listen to the story and just hear the story
Right. Wow.
Yeah,
on
I
that
think so
level.
too.
And I think that's a
I
God.
think so too. Just we have no idea. That's
Right.
That's
True.
We have no idea.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I have this question in my mind, and I think I have a mahalach, but it's definitely open for debate, that like a lot of tzaddikim are Reb Meyer style, and when they look at your forehead and they tell you things that you're thinking, they're reading your thoughts. They're holding a Kabbalah, they're holding a tzidkus, and it's a good thing. It's a beautiful thing. They're using it for good, using it to help people. I'm down with that. Like I don't like going to the people that are like taking $400 to do that.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, you need $400 to read my palms? Like give me energy boosts? Like what is this? So I don't like that. But Rebbe Meyer is in a different world. So, and then there's other tzaddikim that are very simple. Like they learn Gemara and they're Erlich and they give you sage advice. And then there's tzaddikim that I don't think they know Kabbalah and they're using Kabbalah and reading your stuff, but the Ruach HaKodesh just flows. And Rav Kenig, I don't know if I think he was both, because like there were times that like he said things that were like just a little uncanny, But I think a lot of it flowed just from what you're saying, simplicity. And I've seen that from other Breslov or like tzaddikim that are not necessarily famous. You just speak to them, and they just give you like Ruach HaKodesh. Like they start telling you things that you're like, wait a minute, whoa. That's what I needed to hear.
But Rav Kenig straight up read my mind.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm
the
saying.
experience that you had with Rav Meyer, I had with Rav Kenig in your house, in the basement. You remember when we had that? I told you,
Kabura, Likutei Olav, no?
no, we did. No, we had Hespedus Kabura.
Oh, the Hespedus, yeah, for
And
sure.
Hespedus Kabura, and he sat there, and I was still first. This is my first year, or second year out of Ner Yaakov.
You were still raw.
Very raw.
Yeah, I remember.
Very raw.
You were very
And
raw.
I was sitting there, and he just straight up was just like every thought that came on my mind, and I was just like, and if you're thinking, and I can take that, I could sweet like sing song, and if you're thinking that this maybe is
Can
not
you
for
tell
me,
the whole story?
yeah.
you-
So I'm trying to remember what it was. It must have been. Does it make sense that this is the summer of 05, like between your first and second year
Yeah.
going to Uman?
I didn't know him yet. It was the
Was it-
summer 05. I got married in 05. So that summer, I was still in America with Rav Kenig, and you guys were all there, I
Right.
think.
Oh, so this was already the
After I got married, in the summer of 05.
okay.
I'm almost sure that's
The
when
summer of
Kufa was.
05.
Yeah.
So you,
After his operation.
it must have been right after. Yeah, it must have been after his operation.
Operation was that winter, right?
Right. Hey Shvat. Right.
So right, so it was 04 of. So wait, so you your first year that you went to Uman was 03.
I'm not
And
so
then
good.
04 because it was you met him
Samach
after your
and
second
Dalet.
after your second Uman.
No, first. After his first one.
No,
your
after the
first-
second. After my Rav Itchamar was my second year in Uman. That was Samachet. I hadn't yet met the Rav.
Samachay was 04.
Samachet's 04. Okay, so my first was 03. Okay,
So
yeah.
first was that's okay. So 03, 04, and then so I came. So my first year in Israel was 04, 05.
Your first time you went to Uman was 03?
Must have been.
That
He
was
must have been there 2 years
solid.
before us.
2 years before us.
Yeah,
Okay.
it could be. Yeah.
And then
Because Akiva came that year.
Akiva was a
Yeah.
year after you.
Yes, Akiva came that second year.
Yeah.
I don't remember you guys. I remember you guys
No.
after I was
Your
married.
second year was
with
when
Rav
Gedalia
Kenig.
was born, my son
Right.
Gedalia.
Right.
Right.
And the bris was
Right. You weren't there. And then
the
the
bris
set,
was
that
it was
year.
a 3-day yontif, Rosh Hashanah 2 days, and Shabbos his bris was Shabbos.
Right,
The next
right.
year I started going to Uman.
Right.
Right. So that makes sense. So this is I had not been to Uman yet, and we're back in where we came. I was like working that summer, and Yaakov had like begun to like open up Breslov a little bit. Open up like we were also even before that I was getting into like see this little we learned Sfas Emes on the phone and like just exploring it like momish periphery like music Sinai Torah Shavi Keller. I couldn't even handle like Dagan yet. It was too like way too Breslov for me. But just opening it up, and that summer we were there, and like meeting Rav Kenig was crazy, and it was right after the surgery, but he was still always with the oxygen, or most of the time with the oxygen, at least when I saw him, and we would come and we would do the sputters in the backyard. I wasn't like barely even like doing anything, but the sputters in the backyard, and somehow you guys like got me into this like the sputters chabura, and like when he was talking about it, I remember I wasn't even sure like I wanted to do it. And he was talking, and I'm like sitting there, like, okay, like I don't think this is for me. Like I'm not ready. And so then he goes, and he picks up his eyes, and he goes, and like in a sweet sing song, like super mellow, like. And if you feel like Hespedus is not for you because of this reason, and this, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, like, but I have this issue. And he goes, and then he looks, he goes, and if you feel like this, and I just sit there, I was like, it turned white. I was like, what is going? Yaakov turns to me afterwards. He's like, what just happened? I'm like, dude, he was just reading my mind. Like I was crazy. And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, I'm telling you everything that I thought he was answering. It was so crazy.
To balance it out, I remember, I don't know if I'm getting the story a little wrong, but that summer, that time that you were there, you came in one time with both of your thumbs broken. I don't know, broken, bandaged. Both of your hands were bandaged because you were working construction.
Yes.
And I remember you said to Rav, what's my tikkun? What am I doing wrong? And you were like crying to him. And I think he said to you, be more careful.
Right? Yes.
He said you're working construction. Be very careful. And then we were like, oh.
I totally forgot that
It's not
story,
like
but
the Za or the Ak connecting with the, like, no, be more
Mamish.
careful. That was his simplicity, like.
right. It's so funny because I didn't remember that part. Now that you said, I remember. I was just telling some of my friends what happened was I was using a big jackhammer, and I had to bend the thing up to switch the bits, and my thumbs got stuck in it, and all the skin got pulled off.
I remember
So it's
you-
crazy. I remember I came in, I had broken thumbs.
You're like,
It's
"What's
crazy."
wrong with you?"
Wow,
I remember he said, be more careful.
that's so funny.
And that was his thing. He was so normal and everything was so straight. And then there was flowing Ruach HaKodesh. It was a beautiful tekufa. Eventually, as the story goes, he was literally dying in our house before our eyes, and he was not getting a lung transplant. But then, as the the night of Parshas Bo, literally when the Geula happened, it was Hey Shvat Tav Shin Samach, I guess, and he um he would sleep downstairs. I would sleep upstairs. But every week he would be insistent to my father that he come upstairs and eat with us. My father's like, "You have your own place downstairs. Eat. I want to eat with the family if it's okay with you." Like, for sure, we would be honored. He knew it was an honor to my father. He went to eat in our dining room. He would schlep up. He had a 60-foot cord. He would schlep up the steps and eat with us, and it was amazing meals. It was amazing times. It was like something that we were never used to. Or Kenig meals were like quiet, meditative, singing, joyous, focused, like avodas Hashem. It was like Americans, where's all of them into the drink? None of that. It was like reading, focused, singing. It was like simcha, but like whoa, a different world that we were used to. Eventually, my father chilled out the meals, and he would start like talking and edging on the Rav and like getting him to like say things. It was fun. It was funny. My father's like that, but that's the way it was. And it was beautiful, exalted meals. But that Friday night, he came upstairs, and it was a strange Friday night because there was not a lot of people there. Usually there were 20, 30 people at the meal. That Friday night, it was literally me, parents, the Rav. I'm not sure if his wife was there. No, his wife was not there. His brother, Reb Yitzchak, his Gabbai, his son, Yossi, and the Reb Mitzvah Rebbitzin. Reb Mitzvah Rebbitzin married the Rebbe, Reb Mitzvah Rebbe, the Heilige Reb Mitzvah, when he was 88 to try to have children. And she stayed with him till the end, and she loved him and gave her whole life to Reb Mitzvah, to the Rebbe. And she was a very special woman. So we made Kiddush, but before Kiddush, even when we were doing the pre-Kiddush Zmiris, Rav Kenig said, I can't breathe, something's wrong. So we all like jumped up. Maybe someone's standing on the cord. It was like this long cord. We checked the cord. No one was standing on it. It was blowing oxygen. We felt it. So right away, his Gabi ran downstairs and got a tank and just opened it on full blast. And he was like he caught his breath. He couldn't breathe because his lungs were degrading before our eyes. And with that, he was able to like breathe enough to say Kiddush. And challah came out. He washed. He ate like a morsel of challah, probably just a kazayas. He didn't touch any food for the rest of the Suda. And after he made that kazayas and he ate the kazayas, the Rebnitz Rebbitzin, who was very animated, starts giving him brachas. He said, the Rebbe, when he passed away, he said, I have the koach to give you brachas. I have the koach to give anyone brachas. I give you a bracha. You should live in Gesund, and she gave him this huge bracha. She was a very animated personality. And she gave him this beautiful bracha. He just smiled. Like after the rest of the meal, she was silent. And he goes, after a very short meal, because he couldn't handle anything, he goes down to his room. He used to sleep with the light on, just in case the phone call for the long transport got on Shabbos. And he went downstairs to retire, and me and my parents and the Rebbitzin went to the Svarim room, and we were just sitting there learning and talking. And the Rebbitzin said, "You know why I was quiet for the rest of the meal, which was very uncharacteristic?" She said, "Because I was doing a spoidus with Hashem, and I was screaming at Hashem the whole meal, in my own words, dying before our eyes. He has a family. He has a kehillah. He's a tzaddik. He's been serving you his whole life. Can't do this, Hashem. Can't do this, Hashem." And I was screaming at Hashem the whole meal. So that's what she said. So around 11:30, 12 o'clock, we all went to our rooms, went to sleep. It was late. I was tired. I hadn't told this story to anyone, so this will be the first time. I told it to Shimi Fried around a month ago, but no one else has heard the story. And I went to my room, and now I have a family, so I have tons of excuses not to do as bad as this. At that point, I don't know what my excuses were, but somehow in life, we always have excuses not to do as bad as this. Like I could be on vacation, I have to be with my wife now, you could be there. So at that point, I was single, not doing anything, not part of a kollel, not part of a yeshiva, but I didn't have any time to do as bad as this that day. So I get to my room, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do some as bad as this. But it was 11:30, it was 12 o'clock, and I was really tired. So I sat on my plush carpet floor and I just started doing his dozes, Shem, Shem, I love you. Help me. Please help me. And I was doing this for like 10 minutes, like I said, I'm gonna do a half hour because a lot of times the fast and like the fast, you try to do an hour, it's not gonna happen. Give me a half hour, Hashem. I was doing that. After like 10 minutes of doing that, I was like, something hit me. And I was like, if you want to go to sleep, go into your bed. If you want to do this, stand up. And I jumped up and it gave me such it just like popped into my head. Like, just do it. Like, don't do this wishy-washy stuff. Go to sleep or do this. So I started pacing my room and and I was just speaking and the words started flowing. Like everything just started going. And I just started telling Hashem, it says, you gave me a Rebbe. I was broken in the mirror. I was searching. You gave me Reb Nachman. Reb Nachman is a Rebbe. I love him. Everything. I have no words to thank you, Hashem. Like he's everything. But it says Asay l'charav. Asay means in the physical reality, you have to have a Rav, not a Rebbe, a Rav. Someone that can just help you out. Like, what do I do now? Where do I go? What's the proper bounce? Where do I send my kid to Cheder? Reb Nachman's going to help you, but sometimes you just need to speak to someone. So now I finally find someone that I think might be my Rav, and you're killing him. You're taking his life away in front of my eyes. Hashem, please, just like help me out. And I went to sleep. 3:30 in the morning, get a knock on my door. Yoel, אני חושב שזה Colombia. I was like, what? Like his guy is holding this cell phone. I'm like, it's Friday night. What do you want from me? He's like, it's a Colombia. It's how long? Yeah. I was like, well, okay. So I get this phone. I'm like, hello. Like, what's it? He goes, this is Karen from Lung Transplant, Columbia University. You're Elazar Kenig? And I was like, yeah, I'm representing him. He goes, okay, so write down this number and call because we have a long match for him tonight. I was like, could you call it? She was like, do you want to learn? I was like, yes, I want to learn. Okay, hold on, I'm getting a pen. Hold on, I ran, I got a pen. I started writing numbers, like it's Shabbos, not first there.
That's it.
Writing it with my left hand, I think, And I was like, okay. And we write down the numbers and we go downstairs. We're like, oh my gosh, this is the day that we've been dreaming of, hoping for, And we go downstairs and the Reb's sleeping in his room there. And for the weeks before, they've been singing this Yiddish song. Shabbos is Tayel, sie brennt wie a fire, mamish me'ein olam haba. And it's slow, melodic Yiddish song. It has like 30 stanzas. It took them like an hour to sing. Him and his brother would sing it, and we would all be like, oh no, oh my gosh, not that one. And they would get all like emotional about it because it reminded them of Yerushalayim of 1932. Like we were like, oh my gosh. But it was a beautiful niggin, but it was just very long. And so we get downstairs and we tell Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yitzchak's like, okay, we got to go wake up the Rav. The lights are on again. Rav was actually sleeping like probably the 1 hour of the night that he slept. And we walked in. I remember like following Rabbi Yitzchak, his guy by me, his son. And Rabbi Yitzchak just walks in and just starts singing. Then he opens his eyes. And he sees Rabbi Yitzchak. And he just got this. Oh my gosh, this is it. Like the moment of life and death. And then he just went calm and composed himself. From that moment on, they made preparations. They did everything. And Rabbi Yitzchak just shook his head and nodded. He goes, yay, no. And they didn't say a word. They're so Rav Kenig. They're so Kenig people. They're like, they don't talk. They'll just sing a song and nod. And like, that'll be it. Like, that's, you got the point? Great.
Wow.
We don't have to speak. Altar b'sicha, just, and they got all the preparations, and Rav Kenig was just calm the whole night. Whatever you want is good. Whatever you do is good. And my father eventually came down, and he burst into tears. Like I think the only second time in my life I seen my father in tears. And he was like Rav, because the Rav started thanking him and saying goodbye to him, and burst into tears. And he said, "No, you're not saying goodbye. You're gonna live." And he goes, "Yeah, that's just Hashem. Hashem could do that. Like Hashem is very good. Hashem is filled with chesed." But he was saying goodbye. And before then, he would wash his hands in a kior a little bit further out, and he was walking back with his oxygen tanks and everything. He saw me in the hallway, and he goes, "Eli, come here." And he brought me into the room, and he opened up this little black Israeli sakit, and he says, "This is for you and your father. 2 invitations to his son Shimon's wedding, which was going to be in 10 days." And he said, "I made you tzitzis." Rav Kenig has a special chulius, a special way of wrapping the tzitzis. Agav, at that point, I was wearing tchelas. And every day I would pull out my tchelas in front of Rav Kenig, kiss it, and he doesn't hold the tchelas necessarily. So he was like, never said a word for 3 months, 3 months, never said a word. And then at that night, at that moment, he gave me the blit cheles tzitzis. He said, these are for you and for your father. I made them as a gift for you. And I was like, whoa, that's intense. And I took them, gave them to my father, and he eventually went off into the night. And I remember standing there in the freezing cold Muncie air, watching like the headlights recede into the distance. And it was 3:30, 4 in the morning. And I was just like, the whole world was quiet and freezing. And here he's going to get a lung transplant. I just went back into shul and just started saying Tehillim and Tehillim and Tehillim. His son was there. His son couldn't say Tehillim. He was so morgash. So he was just singing the whole night, just singing Nigunim of this Iris. He's crying and singing the whole night. Wow. And like, I was just trying to say Tehillim. Eventually I passed out for like an hour or so till Shachris. And the whole Shabbos, we were just on Spilkus, like, like, and remember Matzah Shabbos, we just got the phone call like the second after Zman. We got the lung transplant at like 10:30 in the morning, and he's doing wonderful, and he's recovering, and we were burst into dancing and singing and like thanking Hashem. And he recovered from that. He came back to our house, and we went to his son's wedding. We flew in there, and we literally.
And he wasn't there by his son's wedding.
No way. No,
Yeah,
he just got out of hospital.
Yeah.
And it was just an incredible experience. And from then, we were like super, super close. And he lived by our house for the next year. And at that Tekufa, I was dating, and I was having, what's the term in the Gemara? Lace. Bad dates. Tamar Rav.
Oh,
Place. Okay. Every time I come in the Gemara and I say place, and I see the Gerashi says the Tamar Rav, bad date. I was having a lot of place in those days. A lot of place.
L'chaim for this.
Yeah, l'chaim. For all those who are having bad dates, Hashem should help that, maybe this story could help a little bit for all those bad dates.
Amen. L'chaim.
Chaim,
Kenig.
to Rav Kenig and Shama and everything.
Promise. The Shama go ever higher.
hey,
All those connected. And pausing it.
It's cloud recording?
Was it not recording the whole
It's
time?
supposed to be recording. What does it say on there?
Yeah. So what we were speaking about, the bad dates, right?
Yeah.
So I went through a lot of them then, Baruch Hashem, mismatched dates. And there was a snowstorm 2 or 3 days after the operation the Rav had. He was doing well, he was recovering. The amazing thing is that very often, that's how we got into the whole lung transplant, because you mentioned
Right.
grafting from Israel and America. The lung transplants are not simple things, not simple operations. Basically, you have to lower the immune system, because the immune system will reject the new foreign objects. So they basically take away their immune system so that the lung can beat and they can live. But they're, very schwach because of that. But because of that, a lot of people also, they're addicted to oxygen. So a lot of times they can't get off of oxygen for months, sometimes years after the lung transplant, because they feel like they're going to die, even though they might not. So Rav Kenig was in the hospital, and he said he wants the oxygen. He was like nervous, and they said fine. And they walked in, the nurses, one day, and they were like, "It's not plugged in." Like, one of the guys forgot to plug it in, and it was like 20 minutes. He was like, "What?" Like, "You're not getting oxygen for 20 minutes. How do you feel?" He was like, "Perfect." They're like, he ripped out the oxygen. He didn't really need oxygen from that day on. He wasn't like, it broke the addiction. Yeah, it was like this really. But so it was a snowstorm. I remember one of the guys had this huge Suburban with foghorns on it. He was like, "We're going to visit the Rav in the snowstorm." I thought, wow, okay. They said, "Okay, you can visit." So we plowed through the snow on the freeway, and we get to the hospital there, and there's
where's Columbia? Uptown Manhattan?
Yeah, it wasn't far. And I've never seen the Rav, because I only met him with double oxygen, like a nose piece and a face mask, and like it's like this huge hefts on his face. The first time I ever saw his face. And I remember having this pachad, like the tsuras panim of tzaddik. And I was just like, oh, okay, like, and we were all there and we like spent literally like a minute because he's so immunocompromised that we didn't want to like get any germs or anything. We were very nervous, but we wanted to see him and show him that we were there. So we all did that. And then we all walked out. And then the gabbai went out. And my father was like, Rav's alone. There's no nurses, there's no gabbais, there's no doctors. Yoeli, go inside. Someone should be with him. He was just like scared. I'm sure like there were moments in the hospital that he was alone, but like my father was like, you have to go inside. You
I think it's also Indian to
Shmira.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I guess. Yeah, Shmira. So he was like, go inside until someone comes back. I was like, why me? He was like, just go inside. I was like, I was the curtain. I was like, hobbled into the room, like awkwardly standing over the Rav's hospital gown bed, like, hello, And he was like, and he just turns to me. This. He just turns to me. He goes, "Kibalta tatalis cotton." This is what he asked me. He said, "Did you get my tzitzis that I gave you? Or you gave it to me."
Right.
I was like, again, me, very little Aziz Kedusha have. It comes down from heaven sometimes, and I just got this bolt of Aziz Kedusha, and I said, "Ken, toda." I'm like, "Gadol. Where's my wife? Why am I gonna get married?"
Wow,
And I
yeah.
said that to him, and he didn't. He just looked at me with those eyes that only Rav Kenig had, that like burning eyes, and he looked at me with this strength and confidence, and he just looked deep into my soul, and he just said, "Yes, lolly dog." He just said, "Just don't worry."
Wow.
He said it twice, "Don't worry." And from that moment on, I still had bad days. And I went back home, and my mother was like, "There's this really nice Amish girl from Bisyak and Borough Park that wants to go out." I was like, "I am not a Bisyak and Borough Park girl type of guy." And I was about to make my like classic stink and be like, "Can I find out?" Like a whole back and forth. And then his words came, "Lolly dog, don't worry. Just stop." And I just smiled and I said, "Sure, let's go out." And I like went out with this girl. It didn't make sense. My mother was like, "Put the shotgun station, try it again." I was like, "Sure, let's try it again." And I just had this like relaxing
Wow.
atmosphere because like I was always like so fighting and this. And then I would meet a girl and maybe she's the right one, she's wrong. Like it was always like sagas and intensity with that. And I was just like, cool. And literally the next girl after that, Bar Parker, was my wife, Baruch Hashem. And we met and it was Baruch Hashem, it was clear and it was beautiful. And we got engaged with the Rav. I think you both were there at the engagement party. I'm almost positive.
because it was right after Mayor Steinman's wedding. No,
Yeah, it might have been like a few days.
Mayor Steinman got married at the end of Adar. I know it's like
Right, it was
It was
Pesach.
Pesach
we
time,
flew
right?
in for
Nissan.
Pesach, and he got
It was the first day of Nissan or like third day of Nissan.
So his wedding was at the end of Adar.
Right.
He came in early before the end of the Zman.
Ah.
My wife.
Right.
And we were right, and then you got engaged right afterwards.
And then you stayed. You were like,
And then-
let's stay till the wedding.
Right, you stayed that
And
whole
we
time.
stayed.
I went
Right.
back.
The wedding was in the summer.
Yeah, June 29th or something. Yeah.
Yeah, we stayed till after the wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. So that and then like he was in Sada Kedushin and it was the first wedding that he danced at for like 10 years because he couldn't dance or anything like that. It was wonderful. It was wondrous. It was the Shiluv of Simply Tzvat with Mordechai Ben David. And it was like an amazing wedding, Baruch Hashem.
Those few months, I
Yeah.
treasure those few months.
Yeah.
Like some of the
Well,
best memories of my life.
what did we do then?
Most transformative month of my life. Some of
Right.
the most transformative months.
Yeah, yeah. Every morning we'd learn with the Rav, we'd daven with him, and then we sat and learned together.
It was
Almost the
sometimes
whole day.
just 2-3 people, just us and Rav Kenig,
Yeah,
and he'd make us read the Likutei Halachos
Yeah.
after davening. And I'm like reading.
yeah, yeah. And then we started Hisbodedus this together and Hisbodedus Chabura. It was an incredible thing to experience. And then for the years later, for all these years, Baruch Hashem, we were zeicha to, carry on the connection. And then a couple of years back, I was already now over 2 years, that he got a little infection and this and that and back and forth. He lived 14 years on that lung. Reb Yoeli Klein, the fundraiser from Tzfas, he is one of the only people that could probably figure this out. He was once sitting there and he said, "Wait a minute, give me a calendar." He starts flipping through calendars. He says, Rav Kenig's father of Gedalia lived 59 years. 8 months and 6 days. Rav Kenig, when he got his lung transplant, lived 59 years, 6 months, and it was something like 8 to 10 days before
Wow.
the years of his father. And it says in the Torah that you should be mahar or tshuva if you live the day once you get to the years of your father. And when they took out Rav Kenig's lung, it was so shriveled and destroyed. They asked interns in Colombia, what organ do you think this is? And they said it's kidney, a liver. No one could recognize it as a lung.
Whoa.
It was shriveled and destroyed so much. And so they asked the doctor, how long do we have to live? They said he had 2 days, and a different doctor said he could have made it 10 days, but I'm not sure. The other doctor said 2 days max on such a lung.
And nobody knows how long the lung looked like that before.
Yeah, but he was but he was literally days away from expiring. Like when we saw him that Friday night, that's why the Rebbe was screaming at Hashem. He didn't look alive. He looked like he was not there, like he wasn't living. And not only that, the night of that transplant, there was a Yid in Muncie in Askan that arranged the whole thing. He told me this afterwards. Every lung transplant that comes through, they have to have 3 people on the table, operating table, prepped and ready for surgery at that moment. Why? Because if they cut one guy open, a lung could only stay for a certain amount of time fresh and good and viable for a lung transplant. They cut the first guy open, and for some reason or another, there's a little pipe that doesn't connect properly, and they see it's not going to go quickly. They go straight to the second operating table, cut the second guy. If the second guy does, or whatever, they go to the third guy. He was third that night. He was the third string lung participant in that night. And a lot of times they said that even right before they cut, they have the last signature, people back out. People say, I'd rather live another 5 months than die on the operating table. And people back out. So we don't know what happened to those 2 people, if they cut them open or if they just backed out because they got scared. Rav Kenig didn't have a choice because he signed his life away to this Askan. He didn't have a choice legally whether or not he would take the. He told my father if it was up to me, he said if I would have had strength, I would have run into the forest away from you guys at that night. He said I was so scared. He told my father this. Wow. I was terrified. He didn't show it on his face. He was calm the whole night. He said I was terrified. He said I could have died. Like you're going. That's why he was saying goodbye. Like this is it. But he pulled himself together with Amuna and with Bitachon. And he was third that night, and he didn't have a lot of time left. It was unbelievable miracles. It was Bachatzais Alayla. Then, this is another crazy part of the story. How do you get a lung transplant? You get a lung transplant when someone's clinically dead and they donate their body to save people. They start with the retinas, then they go to the ears, they go to every organ that's non-functional, and then they take out the last 2 are the heart and the lungs. The person dies, and they send these organs all over the country. His organ came from a guy that 18 years old that was a football player in Philadelphia. And that night, I think as it goes, he was depressed. He tried to kill himself. His parents found him and they stopped the bleeding enough that he was brain dead and he was never going to be in a living position, but they caught him. And his parents said they want to donate his body to save other people's lives. They flew it in a private jet. That's what they do. Or helicopter, I don't know exactly what it was. They flew it into Colombia. And that was he got his lung disease 18 years before. He was diagnosed 18 years before, which is the Gemara says why is maktim refuah l'maka.
Wow, so this guy lived his whole life.
So as you mentioned before, I was always a filmmaker in my younger years. I used to carry around a little video camera and you have 70, 80 hours, which are totally off limits to the world. From 18, 19, and 20. No one's seeing it. Don't worry out there. They're locked up, hopefully safe in the safe deposit box.
Great. Now you have to tell your mother to increase the security of this.
Yes, exactly. Which safe deposit box and which bank, I'm not revealing. But the point is that I would always video things. So in my mind, as a video director, that would be an incredible film to intersperse scenes of this little baby being born to non-Jewish Christian parents in Philadelphia, and they're holding him, and intersperse the scenes with Rav Kenig going to the doctor for the first time with a black beard, a healthy, but you have some bad news, you have a genetic lung disease, and then growing up, and you just intersperse the scenes of him growing up and him slowly dying, and then the intersection of lives. It's so insane to think about it.
How did you find out who it was? That they.
The Askin knows about these things because he's very tight with the doctors. I don't think he knows his name necessarily, but he told them a little bit the background, you're not really supposed to know details.
Sure, it's like
But like he told them like the basic Myra McChymus, like it came from Philadelphia. You know, it was a healthy lung. 3 weeks before, I think something like 3 weeks before was New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is a big time of lung transplants because guys get drunk and they drink and drive. It's known as the lung transplant time of the year. It's pretty sad, but
it's like an intense thing.
yeah. But we were all excited. We were like, "Oh, Baruch Hashem, Kenny's gonna get a lung," you know. And Taka, they got a lung called to this Askin on a random night, on New Year's Eve night, I think it was, and it was a 56-year-old woman that was a smoker, and the lung was a decent fit but not perfect. But they said you could have it. He turned it down. He said, "I'm not giving him a Dreckie lung. I want a good lung for him." And I mean, it's a gamble, you know. Right. It's gambling with someone's life. But Hashem was on his side and on the Kennig side. And he got 14 years he lived until this past 2 years ago, where, you know, tremendous loss for me and for everyone in the world that was close to Rav Kenig. You know, for me particularly, because, you know, I'm kind of lost, searching, and, you know, just really, really lost. But, you know, like I said, I've released this on a couple of video clips and stuff, that this was pretty, it gave me a lot of nechama, that I wore those tzitzis that we were speaking about for a year and a half. And then as I wore it, I saw they were really wearing out. Tzitzis don't last forever. And I didn't want to ruin it, you know, like I said, this is going to be my Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah tzitzis. And for the next 13 years or something, I wore it only Rosh Hashanah, and I wore it underneath. Like I wore a separate pair of tzitzis on top because I didn't want it to get ruined and broken and uman and ripped and everything, you know, like tucked in, like my hidden tzitzis, my deep connection to Kenig, and on Yom Kippur. And that went on for years. Then Kenig passed away in Teves, I believe. And that year, that was the year that we moved to Israel. And it was Rosh Hashanah that year was Sunday night. Sunday night, you could either do the Shalom Bayis trip or the non-Shalom Bayis trip. The Shalom Bayis trip and leave Israel on Matzah Shabbos. Your wife's like, "Oh, you're such a tzaddik. You're stayed for Shabbos with me, and you're only leaving for 2 days." Or, "I won't beat you so much this year because you're staying with me for Shabbos." You know? Or you could do like the Bacher trip. I'm leaving Wednesday night. Deal with it. It was a cheaper ticket. You know, I'm out for a week and a half. You know? So I was doing the Shalom Bayis trip, but my flight was literally leaving like 2 hours after Shabbos. So I had to zip, like everything had to be zippered, taxi ordered, flying out the door at 8:16. You know, the second Shabbos is over, into the airport. You know, so Friday I was packing and packing and packing and packing and packing, and we had moved 6 times in that year. It was a lot of chaos, and I knew that I had those tzitzis in my sakit with all my things, like my white yarmulke for Uman. Couldn't find it. Look, under the bed, over the bed, and in the cupboards, and everywhere. I'm looking. I'm like, "Hashem, please, these are my tzitzis. You know how much this means to me, Hashem." And Rav Kenig just passed away, you know, a few months ago, Hashem. No, you can't do this to me. I'm bugging the whole Friday. I get my stuff packed up. I come to shul Friday night. Not gonna have the tzitzis. They're done. I'm not having them. And I was so broken. I was like almost crying in shul Friday night. And I was just like, "Why do you do this to me, Hashem?" Like, you know, the first Rosh Hashanah, then all of a sudden this like thought came into my head. It was a story that Rav Kenig's mother passed away a few years back, like 7, 8 years before then. And she lived in one of the Mea Sharon areas. Right. The last day of Shiva, I decided I'm going to go to the Rav to see him. Whenever he was in Yerushalayim, I always tried to make the effort because I didn't really go to all that much. So if he was in Yerushalayim or even Bnei Brak, sometimes I'd always make the effort to go to weddings and bar mitzvahs and brisim just to say hello and get some advice and get some brachas and stuff like that. So I went to his mother's house. They said that he's dealing with some things. Wait outside. And he comes out after a couple of minutes, and he's speaking to me on the front, like a little veranda, a little porch there in Mesharim.
We've been.
You've been to that house?
His house with
yeah, that was.
You met him. Yeah,
but the Weingart, I don't know, one of these.
Weingart.
Yeah. So yeah, it was an epic house. It was one room.
Right.
That was it. And the parents had a little thing on the side, and there was a little bathroom, and there was a little thing called the kitchen that I think was an extension. They used to cook everything in the main room. Like I think he had 14 kids in one room with the kitchen, with the living room, with the salon. Okay, we don't grow up like that anymore. You only have 3 bedrooms. How do you expect us to live, Poppy?
Right.
Okay, you're right. There's only 3 bedrooms and it's 0. But Baruch Hashem, they grew up like that. We grew up like this. We all have our challenges. Kitzer, so I'm waiting outside there, and the Rav comes out and he's speaking to me. And then one of the kids come out and they're holding a scarf, silk scarf. And they said, this is Rav Avram Sternhartz's scarf. That Rav Gedalia, the talmid from Rav Avram Sternhartz. Rav Sternhartz was from the Gedalia Breslov. That was the great grandson of Rav Nassim. You're talking about, wow, Rav Avram Sternhartz. And they said, this is his scarf that he used to wear. And they gave it to the Rav. They said, here, now you're going to inherit. The Rav's the oldest son. He's holding it and he's feeling it. He was like, the spoil from it. And then he gave it back to them. And he said, Shkach. And he said, for the Rav, it's for you. Just give it to one of the Einakoch. And it made such an impression on me. And that moment, I realized Rav Kenig was pitying me. And to him, garments were important. Like he even told me, like a few times, when I was asking about Shrine or Beketcha, Yaakov remembers the first times we went to get Beketchas and G&G. We were like a little like punky and dudes. We were like, oh, we're going to get Beketcha. Like, I was like, I love these guys. That was in G&G in Muncie.
No, Muncie, right. Over there in the Robert Pitt Drive.
Yes, Robert Pitt Drive behind Shmuel Bushim. And we went in there and the guy was like, oh, I love these guys. Like, yo, we need to get Rajmulka. We need to get Beketcha. He was like, oh, I'll hook you up. Come on. Till this day, I go back, I still see that guy. We give each other hugs. I came back the second year I was married. And he looks at me. He goes, looks at my stomach. He goes, everything okay at home? Your wife's feeding you? Are you all right? Shalom bias? I was like, I'm good. I eat. She's good. She feeds me. I just don't gain weight. He's like, okay, just have to ask. Got to know. Great guy.
Right.
Yeah. So that was
You're wondering if there's therapy in the Hasidic world? Yes.
Yes. You come back
You
in
get
a
it
year.
in the mikvah, you get it when you go pick up your
Exactly.
packages.
Oh, I've heard epic therapeutic sessions in the mikveh recently. I was in Muncie over Pesach. There were deep conversations going on.
Yeah.
Whew, a lot of heavy stuff. But anyway, so I asked him a few times and he said, listen, it's important. Like it lifts you up. Like if you wear a shtreimel, you'll be part of a community and it'll lift you up. Is it Yiddishkeit? No. But is it something that can help you Yiddishkeit? Yes. Like he always put it in perspective, but it wasn't the main thing.
Right.
Like, and then all of a sudden it hit me that now his physical body is not here. And this year, those tzitzis that I felt like I'm physically connected to Rav Kenig is not here because he's showing me you don't need that physical connection. That's not what it's all about.
Wow.
And it was so crazy. And then the first time, this is like the cherry on the top of that story, the first time that I got to the Rav Kenig's kever in Tzfas. So that's its own story. But to make everything short, he's buried in a burial area in Tzfas, right by Pinchas Vineyard, that my father bought as a burial place for our whole family. He bought a bunch of plots there. There's a whole long sipur. Yeah, we have a place waiting for us. Rav Kenig wanted to be buried there in Tzfas, in the old cemetery, in the bottom, right 10 feet away from Pinchas Vineyard. My Zaidi, Zaidi Berger, who you all remember as being that white beard and sitting and learning all day, and a very, very sweet yid. A big tzaddik. Rav Kenig had tremendous respect for him. He used to literally shower him with respect and honor because he used to sit and learn daf after daf after daf all day for 35, 40 years. He just did that.
When he wasn't shopping.
When he wasn't getting coupons and shopping in ShopRite, right? Shocking the people in ShopRite. They were like, you can't use so many coupons. He's like, try it, see if it scans. Oh my gosh, you're the greatest. Like we would come out like $90. $48. They were like, I've never seen anything like it. He was like, that's right. Coupons. It's all about the coupons. You have to know how to do it.
Right.
But other than that, he was sitting learning. Rav Kenig had tremendous respect for Zaidi Berger. And Zaidi Berger passed away a few years before, and he's buried right there. He always says he wants to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. I don't care where, the Holy Land. Not being buried in America. So my father bought those plots. He buried him. Rav Kenig is buried literally 4 feet away from him. It's like a row in between Zaidi Berger, Rav Kenig. And so the first time I came to the kever to visit Rav Kenig, that I was there by myself, like davening, I walked up and I'm like standing there facing two kfarim. To my left is Zaidi and to my right is Rav Kenig. And I was just, what do I do? It's my Zaidi. He was a tzaddik. It's my Rav. It's Rav Kenig. And I'm like sitting there for a minute. I'm like, not a big deal, but like I was just like,
Right.
what do I do? All of a sudden, I heard Rav Kenig speak to me, not a Bosco, his voice that I've heard thousands of times before. And he said, eat some Zayda. Get covered some Zayda. Go to your Zaydi. Give him covered. That was Rav Kenig. And his voice was so clear in my head. That's what he would want me to do. I just went to Zaydi. Like it wasn't even, it was Rav Kenig. And I just went there and I davened by Zaydi. And then I came to Rav Kenig first. And I was just like, you're not here, but you're here. And that's like a very powerful thing that I like still grappling with, that he's mamish not here, but he's so much part of my life in so many different ways. Like literally, I hear him still, like in so many circumstances, like, calm down, don't do this, do that, like, and it's an amazing thing. So like, a person has to have a Rav, and a person has to have that connection. He has to have that. But on the other hand, like when you do have such a deep connection, it stays with you, and it literally becomes part of you. And yeah, that was just some of the recollections that you sparked off with your grafting muscle.
Wow.
Sorry for taking over here. The Raice brothers.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. My mom is like, oh, I'm so inspired, and I'm so like, I feel like reconnected.
You guys were part of those years. It was an amazing time, and it was an amazing thing that you were there. We like experienced it together at that time.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what made me want to connect to Breslov, just being there and seeing somebody who was so. And he said, I hear certain things. I didn't hear him thousands of times. I heard him tens of times. There's certain things that I hear when I think of him, and the number one thing I hear is I can hear his voice going, reading the Kutei Moran, and that line is like engraved in my mind.
Wow.
Yeah. For me, I don't hear him. You know what I have? I have him in the airport and in Uman, but just going.
Well, you still have him in the airport.
There was one year. It was the crazy year. It was the first year was the crazy year. I think it might have been. He went to Uman. He went to Uman the year after as long.
Yep. He was there every year since then.
So
that was my first time going.
I don't know if it was our first time going or if it was
that was my third year.
I think it was
your first year.
It was the
I think it was
first year.
our first year there, and we saw Rav Kenig in the airport.
In New York or in Israel?
In Israel.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah, it was definitely in Israel. I remember because he was going through first class, and we were walking by, and he was like, and basically that year we just learning. We started learning Torah Vav, like before, and we were getting ready. We learned Vav, maybe even before, but like Mamish through Elul, it was like
that was the second year.
That was the second year, so
Yeah.
that was the year.
Okay,
so that was
the next year, but still, like we saw him in the airport, and he just gave us that
right. And that
smile
year
and
was
wave.
very intense.
It was
That year was a crazy year, and that experience was just like I just remember everywhere I would go, he would see me, and he would
In Uman.
like 6 or 7 times throughout the entire trip, and it was a very traumatic year.
I remember you guys on the street.
Oh my gosh!
I just remember walking down Pushkar, you guys lying there on bags. There's like
that was
bags.
the first year. That was also traumatic.
That was also traumatic.
I mean, every time the beginning of going to Uman, every year was another trauma.
Like hardcore trauma.
I remember
that. But Kenig, the whole time, every time I would see him, and he would just pick up his eyes. Like I'd be in the middle of a crowd, and like even in the class, like he's like all the way over there, and like I want to see him, but like there's so many people that know him way more, and they're pushing, and then he'd look up and he'd look at me, and he would just give me a little wave. I was like, and he would look at me like, "What's the deal?" I'm like, "Yeah, Kenig."
Right.
It was nuts.
We were together most of the time.
It was
crazy.
crazy.
We were like attached at the hip at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. Yes, but it was just amazing. Like the whole, just remember those waves, the twinkle in his eye.
Yeah.
Always calmness.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any like he's like a type of tzaddik for me that I don't see a lot of other people that have that type of chill. So much that's everything. Just like lo lefached, nothing like this.
I mean, look, after what I have no doubt that his experience, I'm sure he was like that before and he built it up, but living through that and experiencing and making that part of his life through his experience, like acting it out, through his
Living it, right?
like it took him to another level.
Yeah, living it.
Once you will go through what you described, that fear of mamish facing death and being able to do that with such yeshiva das,
Yeah,
like afterwards,
a lot fades away.
yeah, like what?
It's like I'm alive.
Right, what else? Yeah,
You
so
know?
it was just a new level of just complete. Every time that's why I love visiting him. I remember visiting him in his father's house,
Yeah.
going in there and just you come in and there's an energy of
Right. Yeah.
not relaxed
No.
because you're going to a big tzaddik, but of calm, confidence,
Right.
And simplicity.
and
The
simplicity.
noise just
Yeah.
and you just hear
Uh-huh.
and like super present.
You know what was amazing also? That, I mean, everything in Breslov and everything in Yiddishkeit is about balance. And I've spoken to people about this, and they were all like in agreement in that he also had a zrizis that was so incredible that this was like an experience for me, always, to see him put on talis and tefillin. Because he had this yeshiva das, you'd think it would take him in a half hour. It took him a minute and a half. And it was like, it's impossible to describe having yeshiva das, but able to do doing something with energy, simcha, and quickly. It was just like this, like flow. It was
Right.
incredible, and like he had that like energy, but like it was always with this calm. I don't know. It was just. It wasn't a chill. It wasn't like
Right. Okay.
No. Like, it was just a yeshiva das with zrizus. It was impossible to describe. And by me, whenever I try to do that, I'm either yeshiva das
lazy and
or
slow.
I'm zrizus and bahal. Like bahal. I gotta get my tefillin on. I'm late for davening.
Right.
But he always had that relaxedness, and I got to sit with him in the klois for 9-hour davenings for like 8 or 9 years
Right.
until I started bringing my kids to Uman. And the first like 3 years was really hard. It was just like, like where's the Karlbach songs? Like can we like move a little bit? But then I got into it. It's like the klois is slow. There's no singing. It's just melodic focus. And he would sit next. I would sit literally on top of Rav Kenig. We sat next to each other. He was always Mechabed, my father and me, sit right next to him, and he just sits there. There's the shots pointing to the words, singing along a little bit, but focusing. And it was just people are like very chashav erlecha Breslov Chassidim are sitting there learning the daf. It's like it's like 4 hours because of the shots. Let me learn the daf. Let me learn some Breslov. Let me do some stuff. Torah. He sat there. He didn't open a sefer. Didn't open it to Hillim. Pointing to words for 9 hours straight, davening 9 hours straight.
Wow.
And when I got into it, it was something else. To be able to daven and to focus and to just, like you said, be present. Now everyone's mind's from present. It's true.
Thank God.
And he literally, thank God. But he literally he lived it. And to experience living it is something that you don't experience. Like that's why I actually wanted to hear, just to totally switch things, that story that you spoke over, because it's one of the things that I always love. And that story that you spoke over from Jersey with the water. Can you please say it over?
Yeah, sure.
It's like it just brought out this point so well.
Whoa, I just feel like I'm just in this.
I know. I can't get out of it.
I have to it's so amazing. So I can't. Yeah, I'm like with so many you brought up so many different Reb Kenig memories. Also,
Yes.
Yeah, davening in the clays also was just, I don't know, for me also. I really learned to love davening in the clays, and then at some point I was like, I can't do the clays anymore. And I don't know, I think also when there's a certain tamima thickness when I didn't know, I was there completely as a stranger.
Right.
I didn't know anybody, and so I was just completely in my own zone. At some point I started to know a lot of people, and then I started to know more things than I wanted to know. And then suddenly it was like, I can't do this, it's that beauty of the unknown.
Simplicity,
right? But yeah. So if we could jump into that story, should we figure out what our time frame is?
Just do the story, and I'll tell a little bit more, and then I think we're gonna wrap it up.
Okay. So So it was about 3 weeks ago. I was with Rabbi Gersey, and we were in a chabura, and he shared this story. And first of all, also like Mamish has been like sparking so many things. I was so like, I got very excited that you also chipped off it. Basically, he was sitting with Rabbi Singer, and I don't know exactly how it went. Maybe I'll
Who is
embellish,
Rabbi Singer a little
I'll
bit?
embellish it a little bit. So Rabbi Singer is the original Pilsner Rav. It's Rabbi Gersey, one of Rabbi Gersey's Rebbe's, probably his main Rebbe. And he lived in New York. And Rabbi Gersey went. It's a whole interesting story how he met him. Bezrat Hashem, we'll do like a recording with Rabbi Gersey. We'll get the whole background of how he met Rabbi Singer. I think we did it once a little bit. Right. So when he got to know him, he became like one of his like grandchildren. He calls him Zaidi, and very close. And he learned like a lot. And now Zaidi was like one of these tzaddikim who, from what I received from Rabbi Gersey, is that he was like involved with the Olden Nistarim, and he was like there's a whole different type of tzaddik called like the Nister tzaddik, and what their zone is, and how they like a lot of like meditations that we do and things like that will come from Rabbi Gersey, and a lot of them he learned from either from a different Rebbe, what's his name, Yitzchak Isaac. Forgot what his name was. A different tzaddik who's a talmid of the Piasetzna, or from Zaidi, from Rabbi Singer, of Yosef Singer. And so he one time was sitting with Rabbi Singer, and he was like about to take a drink, and Rabbi Singer's like, don't drink. And so Rabbi Gersey's like, okay, he waits a little longer, he's getting thirsty, and like so he tries to gently take the pitcher, and he's like, no, don't drink. And Rabbi Gersey's like, at some point, like, I'm really thirsty, like, he's like, can I just take a drink? He's like, no, and he pulls out a pen, and he takes a piece of paper and he writes drink on it. I don't know if it was in Yiddish or whatever, but D-R-I-N-K, right? Drink. And he hands him the piece of paper. And Rabbi Gersey takes the paper and he looks at it and he's like, come on, like what is
What do
it?
you want
He goes, I would need a drink of water. And he looks at me and he goes, it doesn't nourish you? Words on the paper don't nourish you? He goes, is chumash also just words on a paper? Because unless you experience it, unless you drink it, unless you actually ingest it, what is it? It's just words on a paper. And many times, like like your story earlier about the Hisbodedus, like you're sitting there like, do I believe in this? Is it really supposed to change me? So get up and do it. If not, go to sleep. Like what is this joke? Like I'm like checking off a box on my to-do list. Like it's not what it's about. It's about living and feeling it. Like when you learn a pasuk chumash, it could nourish you. It could sustain you. Learn Daf Gemara, and if you actually allow it to change you, it changes the way that we experience reality. And that's what Torah is supposed to do. It's supposed to actually change us. It's not just something that we do on the side. Like I also keep Shabbos. Like Shabbos should transform us. It should like you now are a different type of human being. You experience reality different when you feel that.
That part of the story, I was learning the daf this Shabbos, and it had this whole thing that just like connected to it and sparked me like you can't imagine. That it said, first of all, it was Reb Yochanan ben Chorta, who was a ger because of the ox of some yid that he bought and wouldn't work on Shabbos, the famous kid story.
I just read this medrash.
It's a Gemara.
It's a Gemara also. It's a psik.
And what that story is from the medrash, and he became a ger because he said, wow, this ox is keeping Shabbos and I'm like nothing with Hashem. He became a ger. He was known as Ben Chorta, the son of the Shar, because the Shar made him a person. That this ger is the one in the Gemara that says the following Gemaras. Why was the first Beis Hamikdash destroyed? Because of Raice, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah. Why was the second Beis Hamikdash destroyed? Because of Sinas Chinam. Now these are Gemaras like every Rosh Yeshiva, my boy size, Sinas Chinam, like this is a ger that said that was quoted in the Gemara. Unbelievable. Kitzer. So I looking in the footnotes there in the article, which Baruch Hashem, you guys have done a wonderful job with. It was about an app was on Shabbos. The footnote said, wait a minute. I thought that there's a different Gemara that says that there was a pagam in Torah. So it says that the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of a lack of Torah. This packet. If they would have learned Torah properly, then they wouldn't have, the Gilur Raice and Shvichas Damim and Avodah Zarah would not have been enough to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, the Torah, the koyach of Torah. So I was thinking about that and I was like, wait a minute. But the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because it says there, even though they learned Torah, kept mitzvahs, and they did gemilos chasadim, 3 pillars of the world, Simas destroyed. So it showed me from what Rav Nachman said, the famous Sichas Aran, that Rav Nachman says that, someone asked him, how can I have a smother from Torah? So he said, well, you should just look at Jews in a good light. You're like, what does that have to do with it? He said, there's 600,000 letters in the Torah, and there's 600,000 souls. When you look at a soul darkened, his letter in the Torah is darkened, his portion of the Torah is darkened, you're never going to want to learn. You look at Yidden with lichtige eyes, then the Torah is lichtig, and you're going to run after it. What does that mean? That the Torah is a living organism of us, of our neshamas. And therefore, in the second base of Mikdash, they had all the Torah in the world, but it was lacking something. Sinas China means that they didn't love each other. And that means that it wasn't Torah. It wasn't with that. Wasn't with the water of the drink. It was with the piece of paper drink. And you could take that piece of paper all day and take it and go shoot the piece of paper and try to ingest it all day long. It's not going to satisfy your thirst. And that's why the second base was. That's why I was like, wow. But then Yehuda said the epilogue to that story, and I have something to say on that also. What was the epilogue? The epic epilogue from Abe Raice.
Oh, that's true. So that was also, I told over the story to Abe. I forgot even this also. So, by the way, quick footnote is that in by Rav Belsky, he doesn't openly talk about Breslov. Now I'm dropping the secrets, right? You met Rav Daniel Belsky.
Yeah, for sure.
And in El, or maybe before Kabbalah, sorry, but he always puts up stuff on the wall. One thing that he put up on the wall, we didn't quote where it was from, is that Sichas Aran. And he put it up, and people were always like, wow, it's so amazing. Where's that from? And I was like, he swore me to secrecy. I was like, I can't tell you. It was awesome. So when I was telling over the story to Abe, and I told this over that night, it's awesome that we like this whole connection. I told it over to Abe, and I'm like, Abe, can you drink a piece of paper? And he's like, of course. Goes, what do you mean? A piece of paper that says drink on it? He goes, that's what we do. You can get lichtig. I had asked him, I said, Abe, if somebody gave you a piece of paper with the words drink on it, you think you could nourish your thirst? And he goes, yeah, mamish good. That's almost what he does is sometimes you pick up a piece of paper and you mamish could drink it. You said at the time, you said, if Yehuda Raice gave me a piece of paper, I would be able to be nourished from the fact that Yehuda gave me a paper that said drink. So that reminded me so much of the next level, which is that the Torah has to be lifted. You have to learn the Torah. It has to be water. It has to be flowing water that you're drinking and you're quenching your thirst. But you know what? There's a level that you could just literally take the piece of paper and drink it. And it reminded me, this is Lahavdil Elef Alfei Halafim in the biggest way. There's our high school. There was a time in high school that we were into something called heavy metal. And there was a time that maybe we went to a festival that celebrated heavy metal. And there was a time at that festival that maybe, so all b'derech efsher, plausible deniability always remains, that there was a band named Slayer, and they were giving autographs, and they were sitting there, Kerry King and Jeff Hanneman, the lead guitarist and lead singer, and they were sitting there, and they were giving autographs, but we were lazy, so we didn't want to wait on a 4-hour line. So we were just sitting there, standing there, watching them. We were like, oh, this is so cool. We're like 3 feet away from them. We can't get an autograph because there was like a gate and there were like bouncers, but we were just like so close to them. And this, I guess, where some bad Azaz the Kedusha comes from. And then they were about to leave. They were like, yo, guys, you got to wrap it up. Okay, we're leaving. And then they were about to leave. And I just leaned over. I don't know if you remember this even. I wasn't there.
Oh, you weren't there. Baruch Hashem. I might not have been there either. But I've heard the story from someone.
Vicariously.
It's even mamish like it happened to me. And I
remember hearing the same story.
Yeah. And I leaned over and I said, yo, Jeff. He was drinking a bottle of Budweiser. I said, can I get your beer? I just asked the lead singer of Slayer to have his beer. And he just loved it. He just turned to me. He was like, yeah, dude, you sure? And he took his beer, chugged the rest of it. And he was like, yo, Kerry, come here and sign this. And Kerry signed it and Jeff signed it. He was like, here, dude, awesome stuff. And I was like, thank you, man. And I took that beer bottle and I was like, oh my gosh. Now, this is beer, but I got a lot more chiyas from that beer bottle than any beer I've ever gotten in my life. Now, Okay, but if you want to take it als mashal, that everything we do and we experience in life is for us to grow in Yiddishkeit, that's if you get to such a level of Hashem's Torah, you could just read it. You could just, like Nachman says sometimes, just read it, just read Mishnayos, Gemara, just read it. Because if you realize that this is
Ana nafshi ksavis yehavis.
I was looking to write a book, a pamphlet on the first parak of Pirkei Avos, the Avos anthology. I just printed up a couple hundred copies. I have it if you want. It's a beautiful book.
I have it. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, you should have brought one. I don't have one.
I should have brought next time. It's
I mean,
I have, I worked on it for years. Literally, my kishkas went into that book. It's so much to write a book, like just preparing, figuring it out, and then writing it and rewriting it, every sentence, and then editing it and typesetting it, and then printing it. It was like, whoa! It's like such a process that when you get to that down first copy, and it was before Pesach, the guy in the printing shop said I could only give you 2 copies. It's all time I have before Pesach. I had 2 copies printed. The simcha of taking those 2 copies was like, you can't describe.
Wow.
Like my kishka's in there. I had it in the car. My oldest kid was like 6 years old, maybe, yeah, 7 or 6. And she said, "Can I have the book?" I was like, "You better be super careful with that." But here, I gave it to her, and we were sitting in like a parking lot somewhere waiting for my wife, and she just starts reading it. She didn't know what a word meant, my friend. But she was able to read English, so she starts reading. In the Pirkei Avos, we read, and she starts reading it. The hana that I got from my daughter reading my book without understanding one word was understanding of what Hashem could get from us just reading his words. Kal v'chomer, if she would understand it. Kal v'chomer, shiba kal v'chomer, if she would sit there and say, let me really understand this. Let me review it. Let me make it avoid that. Let me live it. And that's just a little taste of like what it means, what you were saying, to drink Torah. Yes, you got to drink the actual liquids, the pneumius. You have to understand. But sometimes you just sit there and say, Hashem, I'm just going to read your words. And that's the deepest connection.
That's
Hashem.
mom is drinking it too.
That's mom is drinking.
Yeah.
That's a bottle that could give you more nourishment on a piece of paper than anything. Hashem should help us all. We got to run. Time is of the essence.
I just want to add on one thing.
Yeah.
I think that maybe that's why Rav Kenig wanted you to lose the tzitzis, because he's like, if the tzitzis that he gave you is on the same level of the beer bottle from Slayer, it's still in this physical world. Like you're not gonna have a difference. But now you mamish had the tzitzis and you can let go of them. There's no panemius to the beer bottle from Slayer.
No.
You drew it out. You took the story.
I actually threw it out one day.
Right.
I was just like,
right. But the story itself is now a mashal that lives on. Like how crazy is that? That Slayer now became a mashal for us to grow in our avodah Hashem.
The
bipnimius. But now you might like the tzitzis, like it's a different level, like it's with you on the higher level.
It transcends the physical, but it imbues it with our life.
Wow.
Raice brothers, Yaakov,
Yehuda,
it has been beautiful.
Yeah.
Utterly beautiful.
Yes,
I would just say you got to do it more often.
Amen. Part 2. We had so many questions that we didn't even like touch on.
Yes,
so.
exactly.
Do it.
Chaim, shkoyach for listening.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yoeli, thank you so much. This was
Wow.
So inspired.
I hope it recorded.
I hope so. We'll see if it recorded. Maybe it didn't. That's happened before. Remember